want to start off our time together today about talking about the inspiration for this talk. Okay? A little bit of feedback. That's cool. So last year, LinkedIn's Jeff Weiner published an article entitled "The 3 Qualities of People That I Most Enjoy Working With." Here you can see the core message distilled down into a Venn diagram that accompanied the post. We want to work with people who are dreamers, that can have fun and get stuff done. And while we've all worked with people who are biased towards 1 or 2 of these traits, and while they can be effective, you definitely feel a different level of excitement working with people who have all 3. So something got me about this chart. I thought it might apply elsewhere. Maybe perhaps to what makes a good security team great. And so, as a participant of the security industry for the last couple of decades, I'm convinced that we have the dream big thing down. We are eternal optimists in our hearts. We believe in securing what most to be considered to be unsecurable. And if you look at the promises being made out there on the vendor floor, I think you'll definitely see a lot of dreaming going on over there. And given the culture around security people, the number of parties and Twitter love fests, and the general humor around the things that we do, I'm pretty sure we know how to have fun. Am I right? Yeah, all right. And if not, come join our team for drinks this evening, and we'll see if we can change your mind. However, I'm constantly perplexed about why we're not as effective as we could be. I think we need to work more on this get stuff done bubble. It's not about working harder or even putting in more hours than we already do. Instead, we need to evaluate what we're doing with a more critical eye and make sure we're as effective as we could be. So let's get to it. Quick introduction. I'm Corey Scott. I work at LinkedIn. I'm Director of Security responsible for our application security programs, incident response. And this is David Sense, a Senior Technical Program Manager. He is our bug herder and one of our incident response folks on the application side. So while the talk we're giving today describes some of the work that we've done at LinkedIn, it's also filled with our own opinions and biases. So it's going to end up being a mix of details and case studies and sharing of results that definitely belong to LinkedIn, but our opinions and interpretations of the work are definitely our own. All right, I think we've jumped off the platform into the high wire portion of our act. So first, we're going to talk about the plight of the current security organization and why strategy won't save you, but tactical success might just work. Second, we'll talk about how we build our assessment programs and some of those results. A bit of a sneak preview. In the last year, LinkedIn's assessment team performed 440 assessments and found over 900 bugs, and we'll get into how we did that later. Third, we'll look into a rapidly evolving specialty we like to call tactical application incident response, and it's a unique hybrid of traditional application security and traditional information response, incident response. And oh yeah, we'll talk about bug bounty programs too. So here's the thing about strategy, this is a diagram from a strategic CISO playbook where you focus on building some things in the foundational side, but at the end of the day, you want to be that executive strategic CISO. And this approach does not work for application security. It might work for things like governance. And so the problem that we find here is that traditional security programs focus on strategic vision instead of tactical success. Application security is one of the most dynamic disciplines in the field, and a strategic approach takes time and is less forgiving for rapid iteration. And it's not even aligned with your counterparts in application development and engineering, who undergo frequent forays into outsourcing cloud application adoptions and seem to introduce a new framework to secure every year. Long-term strategies suffer from a lack of agility, and that flaw is fatal for application security. So strategic initiatives consume budget and time for the eventual promise of reward down the line, while tactical approaches return value immediately and can adapt. So why would we flock to strategy in the first place? It's because management strategy and management psychology focuses on planning and measurement to achieve strategic goals. You as a middle manager in most organizations can survive for far longer executing against an outdated, irrelevant strategy as long as you keep hitting those artificial milestones. You won't survive long, however, if you commit to executing short-term tactical results and fail in the process. The fear of failure and something as complex as application security is causing people to fear diving in. And here's another thing, is that your non-security peers love it when you talk about strategy, because it means two things to them. First, it says, hey, strategy, that sounds like it's not in my budget. And so the second your security conversation gets wrapped around the budget axle, you're going to go nowhere fast, at least not till the next budget planning session. And second, the other thing they'll think is I don't have to do anything right now other than just kind of nod my head and generally agree. And that brings me to the point of immediacy. We need to do a better job of pushing the pace of security in our organizations. Because if your strategy does not include real-time improvements in assessment and response, then you can't figure out how to adapt to today or tomorrow's attackers. As Wayne Gretzky's dad Walter used to say, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it's been, which means you have to take the ice. So enough about why pursuing a strategic approach may not be the best idea. Let's talk about what the tactical application security program is about. The one thing that I found that was interesting is as you build a strong set of tactical elements to your program, you will actually be perceived as strategic by successful execution rather than by roadmap. So the first thing to note about an tactical program is it's lightweight and iterative. And let me give you an example. So let's say that you need to do an API review, and you're getting a fire hose of requests for these that are overwhelming your existing staff. So let's focus on the ability to experiment. So the first iteration of your review may simply be just to catalog that request, ask 3 questions, the 3 most important questions, and then give some canned advice. The next iteration, you could actually add some conditional logic around introducing a design review. Then the third iteration, you could add automated scanning. The idea is to build on it, to iterate, rather than try to make the perfect solution right away. And so what will happen there is that you want to have a uniform interface into the process. You want people to know that they always can go to you for this type of review, but what might happen in the back end might actually change, depending on what your capabilities are for that given quarter. So the second is that it can demonstrably reduce risk for each action taken. So one question I ask myself frequently, sometimes every day, and also I ask my staff enough times right up to the point of annoying them, is did my work today prevent something bad from happening in the future, let us know about something bad happening that we didn't know about already, or put us on a clear line path to stopping an existing bad thing from happening anymore? And so you see here is that when we take a look at those key set of questions, we look at every sprint plan that we have, and if we don't feel good about the sprint plan answering those questions, we redo it, because at the end of the day, that's what being tactical is about. And you do the same for your team every quarter. We look and document the results and answer those questions and bubble those things up to our management so they understand exactly how we're tactically executing. The next is that we focus on operational excellence and less on authority. I've gotten to see the inner workings of a lot of security programs over the years, and I found the best one to act as a consultancy. And the best thing about consultancies are, when they're working well, is that they drive operational excellence. And so what we do at LinkedIn is we measure our assessment team on these set of core metrics. So we look at the types of assessments that we've completed, the bugs that we've filed, and how many times we were able to complete an assessment before a product went live. And then on the ecosystem side, we look at our bugs and how those bugs were discovered, and how the current status, and how they impacted our members. And these are core things that we look at and measure because of our operational excellence. Now, I want to do a quick digression about authority and buy-in. So, the tactical security teams operate best when they are a consultancy and they have a governance mission that they keep kind of well concealed in your back pocket. If you drag that thing out too many times, people are going to tune you out. Because the idea is that if you're a consultant, you're actually helping someone solve a particular need. Now, on the matter of buy-in, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need everyone to agree with you all the time, or only proceed when you have 100% buy-in across the organization. The traditional advice about your primary job as an InfoSec manager is to get buy-in from everyone else through consensus as opposed to action. It's a fool's errand. What's going to happen is when you start to execute tactically, you're going to find people that will fit into one of three camps. The first is your supporters. They appreciate what you do, they've bought into the security mission, and frankly, those are the people that you go to work every day for. You want to make them succeed and have them build secure products. Then you have a large group of people who will follow you, and those are the ones that rely on reliable, sustainable, and predictable execution, whether it be getting an assessment done or doing an incident response. So if you do these things well, people will follow you. If they don't feel you can execute, then they're going to go off the rails. The third is a group that will be resistant to you no matter what you do. And the idea here is that you give them no excuse to resist by the fact that you continue to execute and provide value by the analysis that you're doing. So, remember how I talked about those head nodding, not in my budget guys earlier? We need to get them to move. And so one of the first things I did when I joined LinkedIn is I saw that we had significant gaps in components of our internal network security. And so what we did is we called a code yellow and gave a small amount of work to each team, like system administration, network administration, IT help desk, all those different groups, into small little chunks every sprint. And rather than coming up with this big strategic plan that we would have to wait to get buy-in for a 6-month to 1-year plan. And so that's the example of how you can do that by making people move rather than wait. So let's talk about our assessment program. So as you can see, here's a pie chart, a breakdown of the work that we did. And so as you can see, the majority of them are penetration tests. But we also spend quality time looking at product designs and third-party applications hosted in the cloud for both internal and product use. We call those cloud assessments. And I'd like to share with you how we did that from a tactical perspective. So first off, it's important to conceptualize assessment activity as a flow. It starts with intake, then moves to execution, and then ends with a deliverable. It can be as formal as a certified audit process or as informal as a 2-minute phone call. During intake, you could be getting ad hoc requests from colleagues that are seeking your guidance, or it could be driven by process-driven checkpoints. We call this external demand. The alternative, of course, is self-generated intake, where you're out there scouting and finding things to look at. We call that internal demand, and it's important to have both in your program. So the ideal intake process is one where people willingly come to you for assistance of their own volition. That means something right is happening. So a strong consultancy has a set of operating principles, and here's ours. The first is that we should be easy to find and engage. It should really feel like you're speaking with an advisor who's always available to give you guidance, and we use our office hours process as a way to do that. The second, which I'll get into in a little bit, on the second, we also should not be too demanding on their time and flexible on documentation and preparation. As long as we have the information to determine next steps, we should strive to be agile. I can't tell you how many times we've actually helped teams build their own data flow diagrams or logical diagrams or help build some of their documentation. The third is that our guidance must be clear, understandable, and have a reasonable likelihood of being executed. If you give people harebrained schemes in order to secure their products, they're going to stop coming to you. The fourth is you must assist your customers in getting solutions, and that includes getting guidance from other parts. The last thing you want of the organization, the last thing you want to do is have them play pinball, where they bounce off of you, then they got to go and talk to legal, then they got to go and talk to customer support, then they got to go and talk to someone in engineering. That's going to frustrate them through the entire process, and if you're the first person they talk to, you're the person they're going to blame. So the idea is to bring all all these people together. I can't tell you how many times we played matchmaker of putting different people together and having them talk about the security impacts across a large part of the organization. The fifth is that we must be passionate yet practical, and working with us should not feel like judgment or punishment. As much as sometimes you feel like you really want to kind of lay the hammer down, it really is runs counter to the tactical approach. So one of the secret weapons that we used for a consulting-friendly approach and to handle demand generation is the use of office hours. So that is available to our entire product and engineering group twice a week, but it can also be scheduled on demand. And we have a sign-up sheet, which is a document of record. That's where we start. And in those office hours, you meet with our house security team, as well as our trust and safety team and product legal, all in one place. And so, then it starts with a brief presentation that you give as a product owner. And then we'll document requirements as we go. We'll give them product requirements, as well as for security, anti-abuse, and legal, all right there. And then we'll also do the scoping of an assessment. Just like if I was a consulting salesperson and I would go in and identify the threat model and what type of assessment I want to perform. Do I want to do a design review? Do I want to do a code review? Do I want to do a pen test? And so when they leave those office hours, they have a set of requirements and a set of next steps of what types of assessments that they need to get from our program. So this is an entry level to our program. So we do on each month, we do 30 product consultations, 25 general office hours, and 4 speed rounds. And that doesn't even count in the 400 assessment number that we have. And in fact, there's no way we'd be able to execute that number of assessments unless we had this type of office hour consultation. The other thing is that you want to consider building a service catalog. You can see here what we currently have on LinkedIn. Each service should have a documented and defined methodology of things to look for, and your testing team should generally follow it and publish it so the team knows how they're being assessed. But we also want to do some scoping. We want to figure out what the game overs are for a given assessment and document those as part of a test plan. And then finally, the idea is to determine what parts of your methodology you can keep and which parts you can throw away in order to get that number of assessments done. So one of the things that happens when you get some management support is that they'll say things like, all of our products need to be reviewed before launch. When I first heard this, I thought my marching orders were clear, and I was happy to have such strong executive support. But while I'm still in tremendous gratitude for the support that I have every day, I quickly realized that this doesn't end the policy discussion here. It actually left me with more questions than answers, including like, what does it mean to be reviewed? What does launch even mean? And with like incremental improvements that happen every day, how do you know when one version of the product ends and another one begins? And how do you know when you're done? So what we did is we started to break these questions down. And so we used the office hours as the entry point. And then we had to have the latitude to determine what types of review were necessary. So we think a lot about member privacy and expectations first. And then from there, we look at seeing how the application can be abused. Then we go on to think about how the product can be internally secured. And then finally, we rely on our expertise to do that custom scoping. So then to answer the question about what does launch even mean, or where does one begin, we do a lot of A/B testing, slow ramps to company, and then to small percentages of customers. If you review too early, the chances of you having good coverage by the time the product makes it to a larger population is slim without significant repeated effort. And if you review too late, you may have a vulnerability in production that impacts at least some members. It's important to do a couple things here. The first is to make doubly sure, no, triply sure, that when you have A/B testing or limited ramp or launch capability, that it can't be overridden and controlled by an attacker. The second is to have defined features that are most meaningful from a security perspective. In our case, anything that touches confidential or highly confidential member data. So we've talked about external demand. Let's talk about internal demand for a little bit. So you want to be part of the product launch flow. At LinkedIn, we have a product review process, and we sit there and monitor what's going on in those, and then determine where it's best to insert ourselves into the design process. Typically, again, it starts with office hours, but I'll also end up being things like looking at how we're doing our ramps for our products, and looking at the roadmaps there to determine how best to do the reviews. But the other thing you want to try to do is you want to look for opportunities to contribute security guidance outside of just pen testing and code review, offering to do white papers on how the product is secured, or introducing third-party assessments, or we're doing abuse detection and monitoring definitions. The other thing that we do is we look for changes in staging and production. We actually monitor how people are using the site, and if all of a sudden new code paths show up, we take a look and figure out how best to identify those applications and see how they slip through our cracks. And then the other major thing you want to do is befriend the gatekeepers. These are the people who are registering your domains. These are the people who are maintaining DNS, and those that are responsible for front-end traffic routing, because when a new endpoint shows up, you don't want to be surprised. So note that there are some pitfalls that could trap your tactical assessment efforts. As you increase the number of mandated reviews, you'll get more uninteresting things to reviews. These are projects or products that you need to go through but you quickly realize that assessing them will result in little value. You need to be very quick to identify these early in the funnel, usually through office hours, and quickly and ruthlessly opt out of assessing them. Otherwise, you're going to get caught in your own gears. Your assessment team will be unmotivated, the requesters will be annoyed, and you simply won't be delivering as much value as you think you could. The other question we get is about standards. So clear standards about how to deal with common security issues and what to avoid will definitely help, along with sharing your application-specific test plans, but don't allow self-certification. It's a good idea instead to keep an open book on how people will be assessed. Treating the assessment like some type of magical black box creates unnecessary uncertainty and anxiety to the project team. Our testing methodology and our pre-release checklist for web and iOS and Android applications are all documented on our engineering wiki, and we point the team to these pages as part of the engagement process. There's a bit of a caveat here about the tactical assessment approach, and that is in an external consultancy, your goal is exclusive. You make your client happy, which is the product team that you're working with. But in an internal security team, you have to balance other things. The satisfaction, of course, of the team that you're working with, but there's also the overarching company governance and security, and the precedent-setting behavior that you will execute. And of course, and most importantly, is customer and member safety. So if we take a look at the case of LinkedIn Intro, where we had some challenges with that product, we actually did everything right from a tactical application security perspective. We worked very hard to secure this product. Look at all those tactical tasks that we performed. The client, which was the product team, was happy. Well, as happy as they could, having a heavy security presence on a startup-like project. But we, as a security team, failed to identify the impact of the design and the broader perspective of the product and how the product's approach could be perceived as less than untrustworthy. The articles to the right show that response. So now let's move on to incident response. So the effectiveness and reputation of a security organization is most frequently judged by how they respond to incidents and security bugs. If you do things well, people will rarely see your assessment program and how it works. However, the spotlight of a critical bug being exposed into production gathers many interested parties. At LinkedIn, we handled 77 critical vulnerabilities in the last year. 21 of them were externally discovered and reported to us. 13 of those were from our private bug bounty program, and 56 of them were discovered internally, either by our own team or by other engineers. Note how I talked about that generating your internal demand, where your tactical approach will actually encourage exploration rather than just staying in a given lane. Now note, we're pretty aggressive about what constitutes a critical bug. And in almost every case, these bugs were handled and closed before any member data was impacted in any way. And we'll start with a case study presented by David.
Great, thank you, Corey. Ooh, that's loud. All right. Click away. All right, so before we get into the fun stuff and disclose a few criticals that we have seen recently, I should provide some background on how we handle reports coming from the outside world. Like many companies, we receive reports from external security researchers on a fairly regular basis. Most of our reports come into us through our security alias, security@linkedin.com. However, they also come to us through social media, customer service tickets, and of course, executive escalations. Now, for some reason, people in the community sometimes like to write to our executives thinking they'll get some sort of special attention. However, it doesn't always work out the way they had hoped for and usually end up talking with me. All right, so to handle all the incoming reports, we have implemented an on-call system for our assessment team. That's our pen testers, and it's a 1-week rotation. The main mission for this individual on call is to quickly triage any incoming bug during the normal business day within 4 hours. If it is an off time, such as nights or weekends, we do allow our pen testers to sleep, so we adjust the SLA accordingly out to 8 hours. Note that after hours, we're only following up on criticals. This will help reduce the on-call burnout. While some may question having an experienced pen tester triage incoming bugs, we view it here as a necessity. Having someone who has the experience with the products, architectures, and existing issues can quickly triage any incoming bug that comes in, regardless. In addition, it's also very important that we respond to the researchers in a very short period of time, even if just a simple acknowledgement that we have received the report and are starting to investigate. Again, we want to do this as a human. This is not an automated response. The on-call is responsible for triaging the incoming bug, establishing a working proof of concept, filing the appropriate tickets, and of course, responding back to the researcher. Again, we want to respond to the researcher in that very short period of time. Like I said, it's again just an acknowledgement that we're working on it and are investigating. If it is determined to be a critical, and we'll go through what determines or what makes it critical, then responsibility shifts to our ecosystem team, which I'm a part of, who then take over responsibility for coordinating response. And we'll talk more about the responsibilities here shortly. So now onto the fun stuff. Let's do a real life critical. Now, this report came to us from the external world. And what this showed was you could change any profile picture for any member across all of LinkedIn. Pretty scary. And so let's demonstrate this. Oh, one last note is the original reporter to us was not actually the original finder of this. And we found the original as a YouTube video already online and spreading wildly. So let's demonstrate the vulnerability here. So first we're going to pick a profile of a colleague of mine, Tony Trummer. He's in the back here. The agreement was I could go ahead and deface his profile in front of all of you if I plugged his talk Saturday at DEF CON 2 o'clock. All right, there's your plug. All right, so moving on. We find the profile we want to deface. We go ahead and click right next to that send message. We click that. We come up with block a report. We then go click over to the next one, which is mark as inappropriate. You guys ready for the fun technical stuff now? Great. We click the done button. That was it. His profile picture is now me. Now, I would argue this is a much improved profile for him. It's much more handsome, and I bet his profile views just went skyrocketing. All right. Now, obviously, if I want to have a little bit more fun with this and play with him, I can do the same steps after I change my profile picture and I change him to Tony the Tiger across all of LinkedIn. Just like that, pretty scary. All right. Now note, and the lawyers and PR wanted me to emphasize this, this is now fixed, so please don't go clicking through this like thinking your friends are gonna, have a change profile picture to something fun, which I can imagine you guys would do. All right. So this report came to us after hours. And as discussed earlier, we try to triage bugs as soon as they come in. Our on-call pen tester was able to triage this bug and respond to the researcher in about an hour. Again, this is not an automated response. This is our on-call pen tester confirming that there is a bug and that we are working towards an immediate fix. Now, the next question I usually get from people is, David, what makes this a critical? Why do I have to work right now? Now, in this case, it's pretty straightforward. If I'm able to change anybody's profile picture across all of the platform, pretty straightforward and doesn't require much arguments. What we found, though, works really well for all the other times that we have to have this discussion is a clearly defined bug classification table. And this bug classification table has a list of bugs, their related severity, critical, high, medium, low, and an established SLA for resolution. This gives clear guidance to our pen testers who are triaging the incoming bugs and makes it easy for them to diagnose them, but also gives clear guidance to the teams that we are working with and have to fix these things. Now, after triaging, which we handle, the focus immediately shifts to alerting the specific team and get them working towards a fix. Now, we're more than happy to help them identify what the root cause is and review their fix. However, we put the responsibility onto them to design the fix and push it to production. Now, the great thing about being an online company like us is we have the ability to push code to production very quickly, usually within a few hours of identifying an issue. However, this isn't fast enough sometimes. When you find a YouTube video already online and people changing profile pictures, you have to implement a stopgap solution. So in this case, we did. We had to implement an upstream filter which broke member functionality, but removed the vulnerability from our site. This was definitely not the best member experience. However, it was a necessity to protect the site and the members, and we'll talk more about how these upstream filters and other stopgap solutions can be used. So within the next hour or two, though, after working with the right teams and the on-call pen tester, we are able to push a hot fix to production and close out the bug and restore member functionality. Now, as many of you know, the incident isn't over yet. This is definitely my profile, but that's definitely not me. Or at least I can hope you can tell that's not me up there. All right. My picture that evening as we worked through this incident probably changed at least a dozen times as my oh-so-funny colleagues changed it to animals and other objects throughout the evening as they tested out this new feature. That was pretty funny. I got my profile views went up. My mom called me too. She's like, I noticed your profile picture changed. You look different. Yeah, all right. So cleanup does seem like the next logical step here, right? But obviously we have to determine the scope first. How many members have been affected? How long has this been in production? And has anyone been abusing the flaw other than my oh-so-funny colleagues? If you wait until the fix is in production, you're gonna inevitably delay closing out the incident until much later in the night. Without fail, most of what you want to answer is buried deep in some log files and needs someone specific to analyze it. The application response team needs access to this member data, log data, state changes, and other valuable application information. These systems will be a combination, if you're lucky, of Hadoop, HDFS, Elasticsearch, and other structured queryable entities. As a result, your tactical response team needs to be able to parse through large amounts of data very quickly. Now, when an incident kicks off, one of my first calls is to our security data science team. We're lucky enough to have a dedicated data science team who can help me answer these questions. However, this is not necessary, and you don't have to establish this in your org. It can be done with members of your own team with access to this information. Ideally, though, this data is being sifted through in parallel to the fix being built. You don't want to wait until the end. This will not only speed things up, but I guarantee management, lawyers, and PRs are going to start asking you questions, and you're not going to have the answers. Better start looking right away. Now, like the spare tire on your car, though, if the first time you check it is when you're on the side of the road on a dark and stormy night, I guarantee you will find it flat or missing. Don't wait until you're in the midst of an incident to find out that you don't have proper logs or that the IP address being captured is that of your own CDN. It's happened. All right? Check them now. Check them ahead of time. It's worth it. So let's take a look at another case study here. This report came to us via our private bug bounty program, which we'll discuss in a moment. Interestingly enough, this person had submitted it after only being in the program for a short period of time. What this person discovered was that they could upload, oh, sorry, this was the delete, my bad. They could delete any SlideShare or any YouTube video from any SlideShare presentation for any member across the entire platform. Pretty scary. So, following our standard procedures of triaging a bug, our on-call pen tester started looking at this. Upon further investigation and following the path that the researcher, the external researcher, had laid out, we also found that videos could be added. Now, this is another great reason to have a seasoned pen tester here. If we'd only focused on the initial report of the deletion, we might have missed this bug completely. Now, this is a pretty straightforward critical. Imagine all of our SlideShare presentations embedded with an NSFW video. I imagine our users wouldn't be too pleased. So, during the last case study, we focused on remediation, cleanup and communication with the researcher, and that's pretty much it. So now, pieces we didn't cover were communication processes internally, why we chose to implement that bug classification table, and some stopgap solutions. So any reasonable engineer, designer, pen tester understands the impact of uploading or deleting YouTube videos from anybody's SlideShare. Pretty easy to see how this is a critical and doesn't require much discussion. However, we as security professionals often find ourselves trying to convince someone else in our organization why something is important and needs to be fixed now. And that usually leads to them labeling us things like grumpy, argumentative, or my favorite, just a jerk. And it's true. Been labeled all of those. Now, this is because, like I said a moment ago, we're trying to convince someone else within our own organization why something has to be fixed now. And that discussion typically devolves into the other person arguing things like impact, wormability, accessibility, and my absolute favorite, it's existed like this for years. Why do I have to fix it now? Okay? Why can't I fix it next sprint, next month, next year, next quarter, right? But you have to fix it now. And constantly having these discussions and debates in the midst of an incident, especially if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, will turn you into a curmudgeon. It will turn you into that jerk. I guarantee it. What we found that helps really well to curb these conversations is a well-defined bug classification table, which I mentioned just a minute ago. Here we go. This is implementing the clear and concise, easy to understand bug severity table negates these conversations. A stored cross-site scripting in production to your members is a critical and requires an all hands on deck approach to fix it right now. And I said meow, not now. Anyone get it? All right, never mind. Moving on. So the industry would argue, though, that we should be using a CVSS approach here. However, as mentioned, we found that this just leads to our own engineers and developers arguing and trying to game the system to lower their score so they can go back to bed. And in all honesty, I can't blame them. I want to go back to bed too. So many teams can do the technical work, and many of us are great at solving the technical vulnerability, and it's great. We can smash vulnerabilities. However, what separates a great incident, ones that are run smoothly versus those that are run poorly in the eyes of an outsider to your security org, is communication. One of the key roles that our ecosystem team plays is coordination and communication. During any incident, there's going to be many individuals, if not teams, involved, and everyone needs to be aware of what's going on. Having a centralized person to gather this information and spread that knowledge becomes imperative. Think of our ecosystem team as air traffic controllers, asking for updates and distributing that information. The communication doesn't stop, though, at just the teams working on the issue. This has to flow up to your management and to your lawyers and PR. All right? And none of those teams should learn about the incident through back channels or word of mouth. I guarantee you it will make them question what you as a security professional are doing and how you're running the incident. All you need to do is give them a brief summary of where the issue currently stands, what your planned remediation is, next step, and next time you're going to be given an update. We believe so much in this methodology that for every one of those 77 criticals that we handled last year, one of these communications went out. So here's a quick example. As you can see in the example here, we have a headline given a quick executive summary, followed by a more in-depth explanation, and a link to the ticket and disclosure in bold. Note that this disclosure in bold, it's over here on the other side, is on the bottom of every single email that I send out that's a critical. Early on when I started sending out these communications at the request of management, I was escalated on and also ratted out by colleagues saying that I was ratting them out or tattletaling on them, okay? The idea here is not to rat out your colleagues for making a mistake. The idea is to inform all involved parties. Adding this communication to the bottom of the email, as well as making sure I pre-briefed the teams on what the process was, the escalations and complaints about me, well, most of the complaints about me, went away. So the other point here is note the tone of this email. Again, it's a very positive email. I even have a thank you line here. The idea is a lot of your colleagues probably are not super motivated to be working late nights, weekends, or drop all their other projects to work on your critical incident. Adding this positive spin will help keep the team morale high. Now, one last thing before we move on. With the YouTube issue, we were able to fix it within a couple hours, so only one of these went out. Pretty straightforward. Now, in other incidents that many of you might encounter, the incident could last hours or could last days. Management, PR, or lawyers should never be reaching out to you ask for an update. You've waited too long at that point. The idea here is you want to beat them to the punch. You need to make sure they go out on a regular basis. If you don't have someone like an ecosystem team or someone like me to do it, that's okay too. You just need to set the expectation. My personal motto here when I run these incidents is beat them to the punch. Now, in both cases, we followed a standard playbook, which gave us a framework. It is not a 100-page document that no one ever reads or updates. The idea here is that it's a playbook that is practical, predictable, and consistent. Teams who have been assigned a critical from us know what to expect. Now, this comes with time and exposure, but also comes with transparency. We believe so much in this methodology that we're releasing public versions of this after our talk, and we'll provide a link. I do want to go back and touch 1 second on collaboration. When forcing an immediate all-hands-on-deck approach to criticals, there is a reality that certain things aren't going to change immediately. Products cannot always be redesigned, a framework redone, or whole new functionality built overnight. While you can allow the long-term fixed discussions to happen, and I guarantee you that's where the team will want to go, oh, I want to build out this framework in 3 months that's going to fix this and this and this. No. We need to focus on fixing the vulnerability now. We have found that many times we can implement a block, an additional control, or break functionality in order to reduce the severity of the threat. Note that I'm not saying we're closing out the threat completely. We are reducing the threat surface by implementing an additional control. Remember though, you as a security professional are the consultant and need to come ready to talk to these teams and offer up some of these countermeasures that they might not be aware of. All right, now's the fun stuff. I know there's a lot of people probably interested in this. Bug bounty programs. So, I think we can all agree why bug bounty programs have been implemented across the industry. We want to receive quality reports, establish a good relationship with the security community, stay out of the media, of course, and be a good use of resources of money. In contrary, these programs have fostered an influx of bad reports from researchers simply attempting to gain a bounty. We've seen the signal-to-noise ratio of these public bug bounty programs continue to degrade, requiring companies to hire dedicated resources, engage consultancies, and use platform vendors to sift through all the junk in order to find actionable reports. So before I launch into the specifics about how we built our program, I want to share another case study here, which I believe will help set the tone. Going back the other year to the intro product, which Corey discussed, and was getting a fair amount of negative attention, a blog post surfaced showing how our intro product could potentially be used to social engineer a victim. The researcher had not reached out to us or had not attempted to contact us in any way, but had just written a blog post. Now, many companies at this point in time would start flexing their large legal or PR arms and try to smash the vulnerability or smash the author or the blog. We decided to take a different approach here. We decided to reach out to the author and invite him to chat. Unsurprisingly, he was more than willing to work with us and share what he had found. Using the same methodologies we discussed earlier in the talk, we were able to close out that vulnerability that same day. As a result, his follow-up post the next day was about how great LinkedIn was and how great it was to work with our security team. And I'm sharing this case study with you guys for a few reasons. The first is collaboration. This is not and should not be an adversarial relationship. The researcher was willing to work with us and collaborate. The change in attitude on both sides of that fence changes the outcome and means that both parties win. The second reason I share this is availability. Due to the fact that we were not dealing with hundreds or thousands of reports that were coming in, we had the availability to reach out and personally talk with this member and learn what they had found. This personal touch, communication, and understanding what the researchers truly want changes the outcome. We believe that every researcher should be treated right, regardless if there's a bug bounty program in place or not. This is the spirit of how bug bounty programs should be run and how we run our program. So how did we get to our program? Well, before we launched, we received a number of emails to our security alias, most of which were unactionable and not meaningful. However, a smaller group of people emerged who always provided excellent write-ups that were meaningful and well thought out and a pleasure to work with. So we thought, geez, we like working with these people. They're providing excellent bugs. They're willing to work with us in a collaborated fashion. Why not get them into a program that rewards them for doing their research moving forward? And this is the spirit of how the original Bug Bounty program started, and I believe this is how we bring it back to its original intent. The advantage of making it private or invitation only allows us to have a more meaningful relationship with the researchers by eliminating the distractions of poorly researched or irrelevant reports. Providing response and analysis to the researchers on their reports and actually fixing the bugs takes considerable resources if you want to do this right. So we did it. In October of 2014, we formalized the partnership with the creation of LinkedIn's private bug bounty program. The participants in our program have submitted over 65 bugs, of which we've closed each one of those and submitted a fix. The participants have given us great feedback about the program, and in return for all their hard work, we paid out over $65,000 in bounties. We've had a significant reduction in the authorization-related issues in our Recruiter product thanks to the researchers. We've also been using the researchers to identify bugs in older code that didn't go through the same level of security diligence that Corey discussed earlier. We've been able to give out bonuses and certain types of awards that show creativity or persistence due to the availability to reduce noise. Another advantage here is we're not needing to deal with the gamesmanship present in many public bug bounty programs, where you end up paying out for a bounty for something that's not meaningful, yet still somehow within your rules. Might have missed that one. So the thing is, our researchers tend not to go down this path. They're usually interested in much more meaningful or impactful bugs that actually mean something to the organization and to our members. The researchers have the ability to invest time into their research. The problem with bug bounty programs in the public sense is you're racing against the clock. Most likely, there's another researcher out there working on the same bug as you. Why do you want to spend time investigating and doing a thorough analysis if someone else is going to beat you to the punch and claim the bounty? It doesn't work. What you need to do is simply take a screenshot, make a submission with a really cool sounding or scary title. Okay? Public bug bounty programs don't incentivize this in-depth or thoughtful analysis. They incentivize quickly, poorly written submissions. In contrast, our program has seen an influx of great, thoroughly done investigations and write-ups from our researchers. They know the competition is limited, and most likely, if they invest the time into research and finding the bug, there will be a reward. So we have spoken about how our bug bounty program is different from the others and its advantages. So let's talk about impact here for a second. I can spout off ratios here and tell you that we have an awesome signal-to-noise ratio of 7:3, and that the industry average is trending towards a 1 in 20. Though unless you're probably involved in a program, or you're running one, or you're looking at running one, I probably just sound like I'm spouting off numbers here and playing a little bit too much of inside baseball. So very simply put, if you have a 1 in 20 ratio, this means for every one good bug you get 20 bad reports. Pretty simple. What companies don't realize, though, is the impact this will have on their organization. Every one of those reports, regardless if it's good or bad, has to be triaged. Because what if it is a critical bug and you simply put it in the pile of, oh, we'll follow up on it later? I guarantee you the researcher is more than happy to take it to the media, and the headline will read, "Company ignores security researcher, 0-day and ponies had for all." It will happen. So every report, and we can agree, has to be triaged and communication sent back to the researcher. This can easily take an average of 1 hour per report. Without doing any math, it's easy to see how your workload significantly increases. If you don't have the proper processes for handling reports, pre-made templates for responses, ticketing systems, agreements with your engineering and dev teams on SLAs for fixing these things, this can grow out of control very quickly. The industry is experiencing a constantly degrading signal-to-noise ratio as we continue to operate these programs. Check out the latest research from both HackerOne and BugCrowd. They support this. The days of launching a public bug bounty program just because everyone else is doing it is over. Think about what your mother said. If your friends jumped off the bridge, would you? This is a complex endeavor you must prepare for. Our suggestion here is to start small with a group of researchers or people you trust. At the end of the day, what really matters is protecting our members, employees, and products. We know while we can assemble an amazing team that will help mitigate this threat and reduce it, we will always need help from the outside. Our strategy is not to throw away bug bounty programs completely. It is to better connect with the researchers who will help us achieve the goal of securing our data. Thank you.
So if we have any time for questions, we have 3 mics up here. And if you're interested in the slides, the updated slides are at the URL below. It's the LinkedIn Get Stuff Done, the shortener.
If you have a question, go to the mic, please, so they can record it. There should be a mic in the alleyway. There's one right here.
Can you hear me? Oh.
Yes.
So having an invitation-only bug bounty program, I can totally buy into that whole aspect of having higher quality reports, and that ratio increase sounds wonderful. But if you've got a closed community and that's the only place that you're listening for reports, what's to stop someone who's poking around on LinkedIn who has no idea about how your bug bounty program works from approaching you with a real bug and you being able to react to it? Have you increased the chances of ignoring people on the outside now?
So we still do respond to the security@linkedin.com, and we still receive reports there.
And we treat them just as we would if they were in the program.
Exactly. And so we've actually invited people after they've submitted through the regular process into the program for submitting great reports.
Okay, so it's almost like a 2-tier system then?
Yeah.
Hi. Hello. Question for Corey from the first part of the talk. I was really interested in the service catalog and the frameworks and methodologies you're developing. I can see great applications of sharing these kind of in some way between organizations. Is there any plan to either open source or collaborate on those?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think there's a set of methodologies that should be shared across the industry so that we can understand what different types of attacks could be. If you want to come by afterwards, we can trade cards and talk about that opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you.
Did you say you're going to publish the playbook? You said you're going to publish your
like
playbook.
Voice from above. I don't know where it came from.
So
that's just slides, right?
Right. Yeah. So those are just the slides, and then later on at security.linkedin.com, we'll be publishing the playbook this week.
What is the size and composition of your security team?
So we have approximately 20 people in this part of our security team that focuses on the programs that we talked about today.
And can you talk a little bit about the skill set areas? Obviously, you have pen testers. What other sorts of skill sets do you try to employ?
Sure. So we have a set of, as you observed, penetration testers or ex-consultants. We also have program managers, folks like David, who help execute some of the tactical aspects of our program. We also have more traditional information security engineers that deal with things like how do we secure our production networks and operations. And we also have incident responders and people with experience in forensics and incident response and security monitoring.
Thank you.
How many developers do you support?
I'm not sure we have that number. So.
Guess, roughly?
I'm not sure I have it.
Corey.
Yes.
Here.
Hey.
Do you guys make a lot of acquisitions, and how do you phase the new acquisitions into the program?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we try to do right off the bat is to offer our service catalog to that acquisition. So we almost, in some regards, we treat them like a new client, though as part of our organization. So immediately they get all of the incident response stuff for free, right? They get all, if the security, we take over the security app, we handle all of that from that side. So right away, we get to know them up close and personal, because when an acquisition comes to LinkedIn, there's a lot more attention that gets paid to them. And then on the assessment side, what we do is offer that service catalog, start looking at points of integration, and work from there.
We'll get the wrap up.
Oh, okay. We gotta go. We'll be right outside if you guys want to grab us for questions. Thank you.